Hey, Adrian.
Let's okay. The study session for Monday, December 11th, 2023 is called to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Kaufman,
Here.
Councilmember Bergen,
Here.
Councilmember Coombs,
Present.
Councilmember Gardner,
Here.
Councilmember Drinsky,
Here.
Councilmember Lawson,
Here.
Councilmember Medina, Councilmember Medina. Okay, I see you. I can't hear you for some reason, but I have you down, Councilmember. Councilmember Murillo,
Present.
Councilmember Sundberg, Mayor Pro Tem Savanik,
Here.
and we are working to get Councilmember Hancock on the meeting.
Okay. The time is now 6:31. I'd like to stand in recess until 6:35 to see if we can make progress on getting Councilmember Hancock online. So council's in recess. Council is called back to order. There's no mayor's update. Are there any issues updates? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving the consent calendar forward, item number 2A through 2D? Seeing none, the consent calendar will move forward, item number 2A through 2D. Item number 3A, monument signs, Lamar, Councilmember Jawinski.
Thank you, Mayor. I will just pass this over to, I think Steve is on to give his presentation.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate everybody's time today and the opportunity to be in front of you all. My name is Steve Cecil. I'm with Lamar Advertising, and I oversee the real estate and growth in Denver and Northern Colorado. Want to also thank the PED committee that I shared this information with earlier this year, and then our previous study session back in March. So thank everybody again for the opportunity and the time.
Hey, Steve, I don't know if it's just me, but your sound is a little weak. Can you double check that? Maybe I'm not the only one.
Any other members having trouble hearing?
Testing. Can you hear me better?
That's much better. Thank you. Thanks.
Yes. Sorry about that. I will share my screen. I'm hoping that there's 1 minute video on technology that I'm hoping will work. If it doesn't, then I will read the audio for you all, but let me share my screen with you. Is everybody able to see my screen? Okay, perfect. So, today I'm going to share with you an opportunity that enhances the city's communication capabilities to the Aurora residents. This also will generate revenue for the city of Aurora, and it will have zero cost to the city of Aurora and its residents from start to finish. Working with staff, our program and site locations provide for the necessary revenue projections and align with the city's recommendations. This is a 3-year pilot program, but it's broken out into a 2-year plus 1. Typically for capital expenditure like these displays are in other municipalities, we've seen roughly right around a 10-year partnership, but we understood that 10 years was not a pilot program. So working with staff and trying to figure out what could we do with a pilot program, and we came with 2 years would give the city enough time to evaluate the program. If they like it, if they like the locations, don't like the locations, would like to change anything, and that 2 to 3 year time frame would give Lamar direction on what the next steps are and what the city's recommendations are in that 2 to 3 year time frame, and also allow Lamar to recoup some of its capital expense. I will share 5 locations. Some are single-sided, some are double-sided, and really just want to get your thoughts on these locations. If you like one or all or none, I'm happy to go back and revisit some alternative locations as well.
Steve, I am so sorry. I could seriously just be getting old, but you are coming in choppy and quiet.
Oh no.
Yep, same for me.
Yeah, Steve, I'm really struggling to hear what you just said.
All right. I'm not trying to figure out there's a better way for me to fix that. So it's not just the volume, it's choppy.
Okay, that's perfect right there. Don't move. Right there.
From the diaphragm.
Perfect. I am not moving from this location. So as I mentioned, the city communication devices will benefit exponentially from expanded capabilities for communicating, messaging, alerts, and announcements on a 24/7 basis through unlimited content capabilities. When I'm talking about messaging, these are static images. They're not videos. It's not a movie. It is a static message that the city could utilize to populate whatever message it feels is appropriate at that location at that time in real time. So you can have the holiday lights, you can have buckle up, you can have put your phone down, whatever the message is at that time, we can populate on these at zero cost to the city. These displays have 8 spots. One of those spots is utilized for city messaging, and that has a value, monetary value over this 3-year partnership of roughly $638,000 over these 5 locations. And again, the locations, if there's anything that needs to be changed, happy to revisit that as well. Over the 3 years, we anticipate, and this is not monetary value, this is revenue to the city. We anticipate just over $1 million of revenue to the city based off of the 3 years, 5 locations, and at zero cost to the city. Lamar will be fully responsible for all design, construction, and ongoing maintenance. This includes manufacture, develop, deliver, construct, engineer, operate, maintain. If any need to come down, remove those as well, all at zero cost to the city. The city of Aurora and Lamar will mutually agree upon a design. There could be multiple designs. If you are in one location, city may want a design to be different than another location. So we will commit to working with the city to make sure we have the right design out there for you all. Lamar commits to working with staff to ensure electrical to parkees will be provided underground. All design specifications and engineered drawings will be provided for final approval by the city of Aurora. Lamar will not do anything without city's approval. The revenue to the city, we anticipate the first year will be just under $300,000 for year 1. year two, 372,000, and year three, 387,000. So in that 2 to 3 year range where the city would be deciding on what they'd like to do moving forward, we anticipate just under $400,000 to the city of Aurora. Lamar will assume responsibility for content regulations and use its stringent ad restriction criteria to prevent unwanted content from appearing on any of the parkees. Our 24/7 National Operations Center, which is what we call the NOC, will oversee the program to ensure compliance with all required content regulations. Our NOC monitors and supports the largest digital out-of-home network in the United States, serving over 18,000 digital spots daily on over 4,600 displays every day. Our mission is to ensure quality and reliability. The locations, our site selections and technology ensure audience visibility. Light mitigating will be accomplished through light direct technology, display downward angling, and foot candle analysis. So the next slide, I'm going to share this video. I will tell you that this video is just on the technology of the display. It is not going to be how the structure is not going to be designed the way you see on this video. So I just want to make that clear. It's just about the technology. So let me see if this plays. If I could see a thumbs up that the audio is working, that'd be great. Otherwise, I will go ahead and read the audio for everybody.
Digital billboards are ideally placed in high-traffic areas along highways and in cities. At times, prime display locations may be adjacent or close to a residential area that is not part of the intended viewing audience. We want to be good neighbors. Daktronics offers an expert site analysis and light study to determine whether light mitigation technology is necessary for a billboard to be neighborhood-friendly. Light Direct, Daktronics light mitigating billboard technology, narrows down the viewing cone, targeting only the desired audience. Within the viewing area, image quality is crisp and clear for motorists and pedestrians, day or night, while light from the billboard is alleviated the moment the viewer leaves the specified display area. This provides a neighborhood-friendly approach to digital billboards without compromising the viewability from the intended audience. Light Direct light mitigating technology is just one part of the Daktronics difference. Learn more at daktronics.com/out-of-home. Digital billboard.
So on some of these locations, we're going to utilize this Light Direct technology and focus the communication on the intended audience. I'll go through each of these with detail on as far as locations and what product we're going to use. So Alameda and Potomac at this commercial intersection here, there's a rock area just west of 225. And so you would see this on the left-hand side. We call it a left-hand read. On your left-hand side in that rock area, just past those ad benches as you're traveling east on Alameda towards 225. And then the back side, you would see on your right-hand side as you're traveling west on Alameda. And for this location, and I'll go over these numbers, we've used the Light Direct product on the left-hand read, and then our traditional product on the right-hand read. And so these yellow numbers are foot candle measurements. And so in the center of the display at 150 feet, the foot candle measurement is 0.23. And then 300 feet, 0.06, 0.03. And you can see at 30 degrees, 0.01. On the other side, it's our traditional product to where the audience traveling west on Alameda will be able to see the message, but then the audience on north and southbound would be able to see it as well. Crossing over Alameda, I'm sure everybody's familiar with this entrance here at Center Lane, City Center Lane, but there's a electrical utility area right there at that grass area. So this location, you would see it on your right-hand side going to 225 towards the gas station there. And then you would see this one on your left-hand side leaving 225. And for this location, because it's on a turn, we actually utilize the Light Direct in both directions. So we wanted to make sure that we were getting the message out to the intended audience. There's no intended audience just north of that, and there's nothing south. So we wanted to focus just on the road there. Traveling around, going to East Alameda, then going north on Chambers. We have a single-sided display at this location. where that dot is, you'll see it on the left-hand side traveling north, facing south. And we used our traditional product here, so you will be able to get your messaging out to the folks going into the facility there, along with that frontage road on the right-hand side. Another location is Iliff, and this is single-sided as well, right there where the fire station is located. So this will be facing west for eastbound traffic. They're on your left-hand side. And for this location, we use the light mitigating, light direct technology as well. And the last location is Mississippi facing the gas station. And so it's right there by that ad bench and that light post. But it would be for traffic traveling east on East Mississippi, but it'd be facing west towards the commercial area there. And so to sum it up really quick, this will get the city's messaging out, whatever you feel the messaging is at that location at that time. It will provide revenue to the city at zero cost to the city. And I'm excited about this program. I know it's going to be beneficial for the city to get its messaging out, whatever they feel fit in that area at that time.
Great. Is there anything else? And then open up for questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me stop sharing here.
Okay, so one question I have, that the kind of signage that we were shown, I think when you gave the first presentation, is very different than the billboard type signage that we're seeing tonight. Can you share with me the difference?
Yeah, absolutely. So the one that was shown before, after some feedback and some direction, we realized that we needed to provide the best technology that is available right now. So we went with this light direct technology on most of the locations for that reason. And so we wanted to be mindful on what we put up and where we put it.
Because that just looks like a regular billboard, although it's electronic, where what we were shown, it was much smaller and was much closer to the ground. It wasn't elevated. Very different. Further.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I see what you meant. Yeah. So this was just based off of technology I was just showing you. So it's not the height of that sign that you saw in the video is not what we're proposing today. So it was really just for the technology purposes only. But I don't know what the size, I believe the size of that one that you saw in the video was around 300 square feet. And this one is smaller than that, but it's not meant to look like that. So there's different designs that we have for the city of Aurora. And we will definitely get approved with the city as well.
Okay, and in 5 locations in 3 years is not a pilot program. I think that's more than a pilot program. Further questions or comments?
Mayor?
Councilmember Vernon.
Yeah, I appreciate, the presentation and what you're trying to accomplish. As I mentioned to you last week, this was not what was presented at the PED meeting. At the PED meeting, it was one location for 1 year. And so I agree with the mayor, this is not a pilot program with 5 locations and I don't even get the 3 year. It says, you said 2 years, but it's 3-year pilot on the presentation. But really, honestly, my biggest concern is traffic safety. And I know, you've talked about that it doesn't distract drivers, but I think it does distract drivers. That's the whole point of it being up, is that people look at it while they're driving. We have had 64, maybe more now, 64 fatalities in this city of Aurora this year. And people are really concerned about just traffic safety. At least I hear it from my constituents all the time. And we have so many distracted drivers already on the road. I think something like 80% of traffic accidents are caused by distracted drivers. So I just have an issue with doing this in our committee.
Further questions or comments?
Mayor?
Councilmember Combs.
Yeah, so my question is around what type of precedent this would set with respect to our existing policies prohibiting billboards, as well as other lighted devices of this type. So I don't know if that's a city attorney question.
Yeah. Can somebody speak to current law?
So this is, Dan, was that you?
That was me, Jason. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
George, yeah. So I think I'll let George chime in after me, but yeah, I think as a pilot, I think there are certainly some potential code updates that would need to happen. If council wanted to do this on a non-pilot basis, if you're gonna do this on a pilot basis, I think we would say this is a pilot, and so we would have to figure out either a temporary use exemption around some of our code issues, but certainly moving forward, depending on the final design and placement of these things, there would be some code updates that would need to be addressed.
Mayor, can I ask a follow-up?
Please proceed.
Is there any limitation on the duration for those temporary use exemptions? Like, would we be able to have something that would last 3 years, or would we need to really change our laws, which would then open us up to billboards in general, and other similar devices?
I'll defer to George on that question.
I mean, I'd have to look at the temporary use permit, Councilmember Coombs, but I believe we'd have to change our code to allow for. I think 1 year, it's a lot easier to come to that, to come up with some sort of temporary use pilot, but I would have to look at the ordinance to see the different options under temporary. So forgive me, I don't have.
That's okay. Thank you very much.
Further questions or comments, Councilmember Lawson?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I have a comment and then just on this particular item. I do remember when this did come to PED, so as Councilmember Bergen, it was supposed to be a pilot. Some of my concerns are, first of all, I don't want to be a billboard city. So if we had a venue or an event center or something where we could put this and they're showing some type of event, I would be fine with it. But I really don't want to be a billboard city. I think they're distracting in many cases. I think with the amount of revenue that they're going to bring in for 5 signs is not enough than what we may have to deal with. And so I won't be supporting this. I won't even be supporting a pilot on this issue. And I think Lamar understands some of my concerns that this was brought up as a pilot. And then all of a sudden now it's 5. And then you want to put one at a fire station. And then on top of that, if we do one pilot, then there's going to be probably other individuals or companies coming in and saying, okay, well, Aurora accepted this one, so now we can have another one and we'll have to go through. So I'm just not supportive of it at all. Thank you.
Mayor Gardner.
Mayor,
I'm sorry, Councilmember Drensky.
thank you. So, I mean, yeah, an RFP means that other companies would come in and say that they wanted to have a chance to bid on it too. And to say that I don't want a billboard community, well, I don't want to be a sleepy bedroom community anymore. I've been in Aurora my entire life. We have progressed nowhere. We talk about having a downtown area. We talk about having an arts district. We talk about all of these things. I don't want to be a sleepy bedroom community anymore. I want to be a vibrant community. I truly want to make our footprint as the 3rd largest city in the state. And I want progression. I'm down here in Colorado Springs right now. And I mean, there's advertisements, there's billboards, there's signs, there's stuff everywhere. It's a vibrant community that attracts businesses. And that's just kind of how that works. Also, I'm happy that we've heard from some of my colleagues that are some of the biggest spenders and have a whole bunch of ideas on this council of ways to spend money and all of the things that they want to spend money on. But nobody's really come forward with an idea to create new revenue streams. And to me, I saw this as a creative out of the box idea to do just that. We have a lot of needs in this city. We're watching revenues decline. And I think that, and Steve, I will be very honest, that video, these aren't billboards, these aren't the signs that any of us saw. So if you could please pull up the signs that would actually be in our city, that would be really helpful. I think that everybody should be able to see this, but I just think that we talk about all of these things. We talk about having a downtown area, which is the area that they looked at. We talk about having an arts district. Like I say, what I don't know what you think goes along with that, but I don't want to be a sleepy bedroom community anymore. So, Steve, if you could please share your screen and show what the signs actually.
Mayor Gardner.
Okay, until Steve's right now working on that, Councilmember Sunberg.
We might have skipped over Councilmember Gardner, but to me, this is all
Councilmember
about
Hancock
messaging.
has her hand raised. Oh, I apologize. There's a lag. I didn't mean to cut you off, Steve.
Thanks.
But I'll go Councilmember Sunberg, and then who else? Councilmember Hancock.
I'm Durinski.
Thank you, Mayor. I was at first concerned about the architecture of these things. I think they're well thought out and they look good. They blend in. They're put in very thoughtful areas that won't make residential impact. To me, it's about messaging. If you hear from citizens in our community, they don't hear about important certain announcements at times. They don't read their water bill, perhaps. They're not on social media. So this is an opportunity to fill the gap in some of those ways with public service announcements, safety issues like fireworks, put the fear of God in people about a strict fine. Adopt a dog, close your garages, puffing, amber alerts, issues related to water and drought, very quick, effective messaging as you drive by these things. If you are familiar with those temporary road sign digital boards that we have, that are hard to read, do you know that those are mostly rented by the city of Aurora? And they are $3,500 a month to rent those things. So we could do away with some of those and incorporate this in a very tasteful, effective manner.
Mayor Gardner.
Okay, Gardner. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I have concerns as well, and I think I was under the impression when we moved this forward that we were talking about one location for 1 year as a pilot. I don't consider 5 locations for 3 years a pilot anymore. I think, I have some other concerns about some of the locations that have been identified, specifically a fire station. I don't think a fire station is an appropriate place to advertise. I recognize there's the potential here to get out some messaging for the city. But it's one slide out of several slides that the city has. The rest will be advertising. And I think, I don't think it's fair to say this is only about revenue generation, because in a $1 billion plus budget, the amount of revenue that this generates is a drop in the bucket. I would certainly be interested in looking at some type of monument sign at City Hall where we could advertise messages. But that's a lot different than what we're being presented with tonight. So like I said, I would support one location for 1 year, what I thought we were moving forward from study session. But anything beyond that is really tough for me.
Mayor Zvonik.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Hancock, then Councilmember Zvonik.
Thank you, Mayor. I since I'm flying in late on this idea, I still feel like a monument sign would be wonderful, and I think having communication that's across the city is important. A city our size, I don't think 5 signs is too small. I think as we expand, as our city grows, there should be an opportunity for us to get unified messaging around the city. To Councilmember Sunberg's point, people don't read the phone bill, but they are driving in their cars, and there are opportunities for them to see messaging, especially if it's important to what is happening to our city and in our city. The one at the fire station is actually in my ward, and I frankly don't have a problem with having it in our ward. If we can have messaging that is unique to each ward to give messaging to our constituents to let them know what's going on, I think that's a great idea. And, to Councilmember Jurinski's point, we have to move into the 21st century, for Pete's sake. I mean, we need to be able to communicate with people in the way that reaches them. Text messaging, billboard signs, those things reach people. And to your point about distracted drivers, most people who are getting in accidents being distracted, they're on their cell phones. So, or they're eating or they're doing something else. So to just say that a billboard is going to be the cause of more traffic accidents, I don't know that I need to see some data on that to ferret that out. But I think it would be a great opportunity. They're paying for everything. They're taking the risk. They're putting out the dough. So why not try it and see if it works?
Councilmember Islamic.
Thanks. So it seems like that we moved it forward. There was general support for the idea of doing a pilot, and it sounds like some of the concern or opposition now is that the pilot seems to have expanded to the number of locations and even the duration of time. Is there a way, and I guess this might be to Steve and the team, that we could look at potentially scaling back the number of locations and the duration of time, and even some of the locations themselves, because again, there's concerns from some of the members. The point being that if this is a successful program, as you believe it would be, if we have fewer locations, that could end up leading to a desire in the future to expand. But it does seem like there's some reservations with the current program as it's expanded from the original presentation that was done at PED. So I guess the question is, could we do a scaled down version of this and maybe look at alternative locations in a shorter duration and still make it work on your end?
Yeah, so I can answer that in two ways. So the scale back of locations, we're definitely open to it. There was some thought that went into these 5 locations to get messaging out, but we're definitely open to scaling back the locations. The term is something that I'd have to go back to the team and evaluate what that would look like as far as less than 3 years, but happy to do that. And really quick, I could touch base on the safety if there's time. I have Brad Miller, who's our digital engineer that has some traffic studies and data that he could share with you all. But the partnership on a piece of property like the fire station or the police department, it's very unique because they can actually use it to put their messaging out in that area. So if the fire department's seeing an increase in people not wearing their seatbelts when they pull up to an accident, we can put a buckle up. Or if they're seeing an increase in break-ins, so it's very interesting that we can actually partner with the fire department to get those messaging out that they see fit in that area. But if you're open to it, I could pass the mic to Brad Miller, who's a digital engineer that could update everybody on traffic safety, if that's an option for you all.
Do it quickly, sure.
Okay, Brad.
Good evening. I'm Brad. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So safety is very much a core culture of Lamar, both for our people who are out working on billboards and climbing, and they're driving around in trucks too. So we have a critical focus on safety. And with that, the industry has done a number of traffic studies in different areas where digital billboards have been deployed. So they've looked at the traffic and accidents prior to digital deployment and then after digital deployment. And the end result of all of those traffic studies is that there's no statistically significant relationship between accidents and digital billboards. So essentially, it's safety neutral with deployment of digital displays.
Questions, further questions or comments?
Mayor.
Councilmember Combs.
So again, I would reiterate the issue about the duration of temporary use permits. It sounds like the original proposal was for 1 year, which I do believe it's possible we could operate within that term with our current temporary use permit codes. But my other question is about indemnity. It sounds like you all are very confident in the safety of this product. So I'm wondering if you would indemnify the city in case of accidents that resulted from the presence of this product.
Yeah, I've never had that question, so I appreciate the question, and I have to look at what our partnerships are and how they work in other municipalities. But yeah, I don't think there's any direct relationship, but I'd have to get back with you on that.
Yeah. Further questions or comments? Councilmember Jaworski.
Thank you. So myself and many others went back and reviewed this supposed agreement of 1 year in one location, and that just simply doesn't exist. That was Councilmember Bergen's wish, and she mentioned it multiple times. that she wanted one year pilot program, 1 year pilot program. That's not what was voted on. I challenge every one of my colleagues to go back and watch that study session. That is not at all what was actually voted on. I did agree a pilot program, 1 year seemed reasonable. But then in working with Lamar, the dollars and cents just didn't add up for these types of signs and the capital investment that it takes to, these aren't just billboard signs like was in the video. The video was only to highlight the technology. Steve put up another picture of the signs. There's a massive capital investment in these signs. So that's when myself as the sponsor, staff started negotiations at 1 year to see if that was possible. But again, that wasn't actually what was ever voted on. And I have gone back and rewatched the study session myself. So I don't know how this got in everybody's head, but that's a little weird. The reason it turned into a 2-year pilot program with the 3rd year being the RFP process, meaning the 3rd year is just while the RFP process is going on, if they don't win the bid, then they have to, they're responsible for taking them down. So it's actually a 2-year pilot program because Lamar has to at least recoup some of the costs for the capital investment for putting these signs up. So that's how it went from Councilmember Bergen's idea of 1 year that was never actually voted on into 2 years with them being able to keep their signs up while the RFP process is going on. So that's
Mayor.
Truly what this is.
Mayor,
I think that.
Mayor, may I please respond? Yeah, I'm the chair of the PED committee. When it came forward, I suggested a 1 year pilot with a 1 location. My colleagues agreed that's how it moved forward. That's how it moved forward. And by the way, Lamar admitted to me on my call last week that the 5 locations came from a discussion with Councilmember Jurenski and some staff members when they proposed it. They admitted it was not presented at PED. So I really take offense to that.
Okay. So one of the challenges I think is under our current purchasing regulation, either you have to do an RFP in a competitive process, or you can do a sole source, but if it's a pilot program. And so I think that's the challenge, and I don't know why we just didn't, if the idea was to have something this robust, we just should have made a decision whether or not we want signs and then went to an RFP process, a competitive bid process. Further questions or comments?
Mayor.
I'm sorry, who's?
Murillo.
Oh, Councilmember
Murillo can speak first. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse here. I wasn't supportive of this project initially and maintain that position. I hadn't considered potential like traffic safety. That's definitely a new consideration, but I think for me, not wanting to create, I also took issue with kind of the order of operations and kind of the quote unquote temporary nature, having just the way that they would be installed is they would build them. So to me, that was never temporary. I do understand that the organization is willing to take them down if we don't move forward after the pilot, but so I do acknowledge that, but to me, the premise was never a temporary thing. It's difficult to remove things once they're, a permanent brick and mortar asset. So I just haven't been supportive since the beginning, and I'm just going to be maintaining that position.
Sorry, who was?
Mayor Jurenski.
Councilmember Jurenski, sorry.
Yeah, I'm happy to continue to work with Lamar on this and just pull back from the study session. At this point, I would challenge my colleagues to not only go back and watch the study session, but review the PED minutes which I've also done. And it's not in the PED minutes that it was moved forward with just 1 year. So with that, I would like to pull it at this time, and I will just continue to work with Lamar and maybe some business-friendly folks on this council that see this as an opportunity to increase communication with our constituents, and a new revenue stream will help me come up with some ideas and work with Lamar to make this happen. Maybe we go to an RFP process. I'm happy to do whatever we have to do to make this work. So I hear my colleagues, and I will go ahead and pull this back and continue to work with Lamar.
Thank you very much. Item number 3A is pulled. Item number 3B, lead service line ordinance, Earl Wilkinson, Assistant General Manager of Operations, Aurora Water.
Yes, give me a second to pull up my screen. Yes, so good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Earl Wilkinson. I'm the Assistant General Manager of Operations for Aurora Water. And I want to talk to you tonight about the lead service ordinance that we are proposing. So this is just a diagram that helps to explain when we're talking about the service lines. There is a service line that is city side that is connected to our main. Then it is separated by a meter pit, and then a service line that goes into the structure on the owner side. So in order for us to determine what materials are in these locations, we're going to be doing what's called potholing, or also it's referred to as hydroexcavation, so that we can determine the materials that are located there as part of our process. So the purpose for the discussion today is to request consideration for a draft ordinance for language that will establish a mandatory lead service line replacement program in Aurora. Recent regulations that have actually came out are requiring lead and galvanized lines that are impacted by lead within our system to be basically replaced in a 10-year period. This new regulation is not finalized right now, but we're pretty confident that the 10-year regulation and the removal of lead and galvanized will remain, because those have been primarily the approaches that have occurred during other documents that we've seen previously. So next slide. So why an ordinance? One of the biggest reasons is for us to be able to have the ability to get on the private property side. We are always asking for consent from the owners through this process, and that is still our preferred choice. But we have had issues with people allowing us to actually get on the property to do the inspection. Now this is definitely something that we're going to need to do, and this ordinance would give us the capability to do that. Also switching to a mandatory program. The main reason we would like to shift to the mandatory program is voluntary programs have been unsuccessful at achieving 100% compliance. We actually at Aurora attempted a voluntary program back in 2018, and it was not successful. And several other cities across, particularly in the eastern part of the United States, has also tried to do it through a voluntary program, and they have shifted to the mandatory program in order to expedite and basically make sure that these lead service lines and galvanized lines were replaced. So with mandatory replacement approach, a couple of things that really works well is it increases our efficiency and lowers replacement costs. What we would be able to do is to pre-plan and do block by block approaches on replacement. So quantity of scale, if you will, we get a higher participation rate, which with the required replacement of these is basically necessary now. And also in this new approach, we are shifting from an income qualified approach for replacements to basically all the replacements that are being done are going to be paid for through funds through Aurora Water. There are also many opportunities to get either grant or principal forgiveness loans in areas, particularly in disadvantaged community locations where these are to be done. And it just really assures us more replacements. So the recommendations for this mandated approach, there's really two options that have been proven. Option one is lead service lines are considered illegal. Through the ordinance, we would establish that lead and galvanized lines are required to be replaced for drinking water service. They're considered illegal within the city of Aurora, and it would be replaced by a particular date, certain, or schedule. Option two is mandatory participation in a lead service line replacement program. This ordinance would define that all property owners must participate in Aurora's program to replace those lines, and they could only opt out with the ability to provide us with a waiver that showed that they would replace those. Out of the two, we are recommending option one. The main reasons that we prefer option one is that by making the lines illegal, it gives us the ability to really place an ordinance that would propose a date certain for all of these lines to be replaced. It also is from working and with our consultant and listening to other communities' issues when they were moving forward with these ordinances, they seem to have a lot more trouble with the mandatory approach than they did with having the lead service lines be considered illegal and moving forward with that approach. So option one is what we would actually prefer to move forward. Also, we have been working at the state level with potential legislation to move forward. We're still working with other utilities to craft that language, but what it would be is basically a law put in place that when property is sold, that folks would have to disclose whether the property has lead or galvanized service line. Another method for us to make sure that we can make sure those get addressed as properties changes hands. So with that, in summary, staff is working to complete the service line inventory and conduct replacement work in coordination with other City of Aurora projects. Many voluntary programs across have switched to mandatory in order to get those lead and galvanized lines replaced. And our recommendation on the mandated approach is to declare lead service line and the galvanized be legal and provide us with more flexible means of replacement. And with that, if there are any questions, I'd be happy to entertain those.
Questions or comments? So is it, you're looking for direction on option number 1 or number 2?
Yes, we have done a draft ordinance for option number 1, but we are looking at direction on 1 or 2, and then we would like to move that ordinance forward to a regular meeting for consideration.
Is there objection to option number 1?
Mayor, I have a question.
Councilmember Hancock.
So with basically forcing people to say that the replacement of the lead pipes is illegal, how are we gonna communicate this to the public? What is the regulation that you'll cite so that people won't feel like they're being forced to do this? Not that I don't have anything against with replacing don't misunderstand what I'm saying. It's just that people don't like feeling like they're being forced. So what information are you giving to folks to support the rationale that you're doing this for their own good, as it were?
So we will definitely have a communication plan as far as explaining. Essentially, this area is going to be mainly in Ward 1 or original Aurora. So we will make sure that we conduct public meetings in that area to let people know exactly what this program looks like and what
my audio just like dropped.
Removal. And also what we will do is anytime that we interact with a property owner, we first of all, we send them a letter, then we follow up either with a postcard, then a door knocker, then basically a call. We do everything we can to get hold of them and inform them and then work with them through this process and provide them with all the information associated with it. But our consent forms kind of overall explain that we're looking for this material. If we find it, we're going to request that we get on your property and then replace that material. So a lot of it's going to be very much one-on-one communication with those folks where we actually need to do these replacements.
Okay. And this is an EPA mandate based on public health considerations, is it not?
Yes, sir.
Mayor. Oh,
I'm sorry, Councilmember Sundberg, and then who was next?
Murillo.
And then Councilmember Murillo. Councilmember Sundberg.
Just to reiterate, this won't cost the homeowner really a penny. Maybe just some inconvenience of their yard being torn up a little bit, or who's going to do the scheduling for the contractor? Could we just illuminate on that a bit?
Yes, the city of Aurora Water would handle the scheduling of the contractor, and you're correct, Councilman. We would anticipate that all of the costs are going to be taken care of by Aurora Water, and we're going to, obviously, if we disturb anything in the yard, we're going to do our best to bring it back to the existing condition that it was in, like we would do any form of construction along the public right of way.
Thank you.
Councilmember Murillo.
Yeah, I just had a conversation with Marshall about this, and I had expressed some concerns around the communication, but I just kind of felt like this was a really tight project that they're trying to run. I think they've done some work already on lead pipe replacement and mapping, so I think they're even further along in terms of identifying who would be impacted. The city would pay for it, and in terms of communicating with stakeholders, right, like every available resource that they have to be able to do this, and it just is for our health and safety. So I just felt like this was a really straightforward project that especially because mandates can be hard. I totally understand that, but it just felt like it was really tight and full circle. No paying, all the communication, right, all the coordination. So hopefully there's I mean, I want to see this happen in Ward 1, and, obviously it's a necessity as well. So thank you for the presentation.
Further questions or comments? Go back. Is there objection to option number 1? Seeing none, then option number 1 will move forward.
Thank you, Mayor.
Jason. Item number 4A, rules of order and procedure, common motions. Councilmember, Mr. Brockman.
Good evening, Council. This was a request to Council for a brief, and Council stressed brief, update on the Council rules from time to time. This is, again, under Section 3.8 of the Charter. It prescribes Council to adopt rules to govern your own meetings. The meetings we're talking about are the formal council meetings. These motions are done at formal council meetings. Study session, there is no voting that goes on. That's by law. Council can't vote at a study session. So these are the rules that apply to your formal meetings. The city of Aurora doesn't use Robert's Rules of Order. The Aurora Council adopted the old Garfield Jones parliamentary procedures at a glance. So much of many of the motions that we're going to be chatting about are actually contained in old Garfield. Some are referenced in the council rules themselves. The rules, again, I am named as the parliamentarian. I should stress the next piece. Although I'm the parliamentarian, the mayor makes the final determination on all of these issues. And the reason that's done is once the mayor makes a determination, that's subject to appeal by council. You need a majority to appeal it and get it approved, but that's the procedure. So parliamentarian mayor makes the decision and then council may appeal any decision. Some of the common motions out there, and under O. Garfield, there's a presiding order of business. The mayor calls the meeting to order. The mayor does a recess and at the end calls for an adjournment. While those, no votes required for those aren't debatable, but they're all appealable. So we saw in one of our past meetings, one of the recent meetings, the mayor simply called for a recess. Council appealed that and it was overturned and we continued on with the meeting. So again, the mayor makes the decision, which is appealable. It was in that case and was overturned. We have every council meeting has motions to amend, often motions to amend, or substitute motions. They're basically the same thing. A vote is required. It's a majority vote of council. All of those are debatable. Garfield doesn't limit the number. The mayor normally does limit the number. Once it becomes confusing, the whole idea of these rules is to seek clarity so council knows what they're voting on, so the public knows what council's voting on. Once you get multiple motions, those are often cut off. The mayor has from time to time allowed multiple motions, but again, clarity is the key to that, so you always know what you're doing. There are friendly amendments. Again, no votes required. You simply, and this is often done under minutes, that someone will bring something up, whoever made the original motion just simply builds that amendment into it, and it is debatable, but those are just simple, easy, straightforward items. The council rules list nominations and appointments, and this is not an easy process. I have to tell you, when you get to nominations, this came up. The nomination procedure We tried to use it when there was a vacancy on council and there were lots of ties, and it just simply didn't work. It was just so difficult to figure out what was going on. Everything reverted back to a motion with a motion to amend or a motion with a substitute motion. We went back to those instead. That's an easy process, but it when there are no when there are the same number of people for an appointment to a board and commission, it's an easy process to use. Nominations are a little bit more difficult. The key on which one you're going to use is just allowing the rest of council, again, to know what everybody's voting on. As long as it's clear, we're fine. If you're going to use the nomination provisions under the council rules, that's perfectly okay. But we really need to make that clear that that's what's going on, because that's not a traditional method that council uses. If you're going to appeal a mayor's decision, you simply state point of order. You're recognized. The point of order in the appeal is debatable, and a majority vote can overturn the mayor's decision on those. Provided in the rules, council may suspend the rules. It requires a 2/3 vote. Again, when there was a vacancy and there were tie votes, we tried to resolve that many ways to try and get past that. One of those was suspending the rules, trying some alternatives on voting. While that wasn't successful, again, the rules were suspended to try and get into something that would work. You have motions to consider, reconsider. It's a very formal process. Again, you need to do that during the meeting or the meeting immediately afterwards. There's a procedure in here that if you have 6 members that want to bring a reconsideration forward, you don't have to wait 6 months. Otherwise, it's a 6-month waiting period. This is a provision that actually does the 6-month waiting provision on this. You have 2 different motions that are used all the time. One is a motion to continue. That is to a date certain. So, and the date certain can be the first meeting in January, because we don't know what the first meeting in January is actually going to be right now. So, but that's certain enough to let everybody know when something's going to be continued. The other is a motion to table. Again, both of those require a majority vote. Both are debatable. A motion to table is a little bit more complicated, because to take it off the table, you need, again, a majority vote to take it off the table. There are publication and notice problems when that happens, when something's out there. So if council is at all able, please use the motion to continue to a date certain. That way we can avoid any of the publication problems. The final issue is a motion to end debate. There was a recent discussion to modify that rule, which was rejected. It does require a 2/3 majority to end debate, or oftentimes referred to as to call the question. That motion is one of the few motions that's not debatable. So when you bring it up, it's not a debatable motion. It's simply voted upon, requires a 2/3 majority.
Thank you. Any questions of Dan, the city attorney? Dan Bressman? Questions? Seeing none, Dan, thanks so much for the clarification, for the update, and I think it's very helpful.
Thank you.
Item number 4B, 2024 as, okay, we're gonna need to do item number 5A before item number 4B, because of item number 4A passes, that it influences 4B. Is there any objection to taking item number 5A out of order? Seeing none, Councilman Gardner.
Thank you, Mayor. Pretty straightforward. This is a proposal to change our meeting calendar back to how it was up until March of 2020 when COVID happened. Before that, we met bi-weekly and had the other 2 Mondays where we did not meet. This is a proposal to change our calendar back to that arrangement, start our study sessions at 5:15 and our regular meetings still at 6:30. Kind of the onus for making this change is to make things easier for both our staff. So there are fewer Monday nights they need to be at City Hall, as well as to the public. So there's fewer Mondays where they need to watch meetings. That's all I had.
Great. Discussion?
Mayor.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Murillo?
Yeah, I mean, I don't love this proposal. I don't hate it. I think there's pros and cons to different types of schedules. So I'm open to supporting and see how things go. I think my only concern is just having these like long marathon meetings. So maybe this will push us to be a little bit more efficient. Is a thought. So yeah, my 2 cents.
Councilmember Combs?
Nothing further. Councilmember Murillo covered it.
Okay. Further discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving 5A forward? Seeing none, item number 5A will move forward. Congratulations, Councilmember Gardner. Okay, then we'll go to item number 4B, 2024 City Council meeting calendar. Councilmember Rodriguez. I don't know what's going on tonight here. City Clerk Katie Rodriguez.
Yes, so in the backup, we had a council calendar proposed for alternate Mondays being study session and council meetings. So that one is in your backup. And then I believe there's also another calendar that will follow Councilmember Gardner's proposal for having the council meetings and study sessions on the same Monday. So we are looking for council's direction on which calendar to move forward with, or if you had any updates you'd like to bring to either calendar before we vote on it formally at the regular council meeting.
Okay, well, we already adopted item number 5A. For a discussion,
Mayor.
Councilmember Bergen.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the calendar. Just wanted to point out that since we're going to combine study session with council meetings, May 20th is the ICSC conference. I was just wondering if that could be moved to the 13th instead, since it'll be a combination meeting.
Okay, is there any objection to moving it? I'm sorry, can you restate that?
Yeah, moving the May 20th council meeting to the 13th, which would also be the combination study session council meeting.
Is there any objection for moving the council meeting from May 20th to May 13th?
Mayor.
Councilmember Murillo.
I mean, I think it'll be difficult to do 2 back-to-back, like double stacked meetings. So I would just, I wouldn't support, but it's also not the end of the world.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world.
Mayor.
Councilmember Combs.
Could we push it to the 27th? Because we don't have a meeting on June 3rd. Oh, no, it's a holiday. Never mind.
Further discussion?
I'm fine. I'll just miss that meeting.
Okay, so you withdraw your request, Councilmember Bergen?
Yes.
Very well. Is there a further discussion to the adoption of the calendar?
Mayor.
Councilmember Bergen.
Just information, not any kind of changes, but the Accelerate trip, I know they have it under June. And I was at the last AEDC board meeting, and it was discussed, it will actually be this year, May 1st through the 3rd.
Very well. Further discussion? Is there any objection for moving the calendar forward as it amended by Councilmember Gardner's proposal? Seeing no objection, then that's the direction.
Okay, thank you.
Item number 5B, request for a proposal indigent representation, contract pricing. Council members, Mayor Pro Tem Zerlani.
Yeah, Mayor, so I think we've, I don't know that we have a lot more to say on this. I'll turn it over to staff. We've talked about this now going on, I think, 18 months. And so I'm hopeful that we're able to move forward with getting the RFP out so that rather than using numbers that have been presented as estimates, we can actually get real numbers to make a decision on whether or not to move forward.
Very well. Please proceed.
Mayor, can you hear me, and can you all see the PowerPoint that I'm sharing?
Yes, it is.
Good evening. My name is Jason Batchelor. I'm the interim city manager until I'm sworn in next week. So this is a proposal just to summarize how we've prepared the RFP. We'll start with why we are here. Council approved resolution 2023-84, and these are the two directions specifically from that. The first is that they directed the city manager and the presiding judge to issue an RFP to evaluate whether court-appointed counsel could be provided in a more cost-effective manner through a contractual arrangement. And then number two, they then directed the city manager and presiding judge to issue that RFP as soon as practical. And then upon completion of the RFP process, we were to report back to Public Safety Policy Committee for review of the RFP results and cost savings. So that is why we are here. Our approach to drafting the RFP, we gathered information to allow council to make an informed decision. We compared to other jurisdictions. We looked at our case data, and then we wanted to ensure that constitutional, legal, and professional requirements are met. And then we want to make sure that we receive cost proposals that allow for a cost comparison in accordance with the resolution. So from a comparison standpoint, each municipal court in the state is different in the types of cases that they try and they hear, as well as how they provide indigent defense services. From that look, Aurora is an outlier in having an in-house public defender services. Most other municipal courts do contract out for indigent services. This is our case data that kind of shows you how many cases we're looking at over the last few years. So these are, we got these from the court administration office in terms of where they are. And this is in your backup, and you kind of see how those numbers break out in terms of the total number of cases. So for the RFP, we've indicated that conservatively, we think that would be 1,800 cases that would be need to be heard, and then these are kind of the dispensation of those cases as they move through the system. So the request for proposal is that we are seeking proposals from qualified firms to provide indigent defense services pursuant to and in compliance with Colorado Revised Statutes 1310-114.5. And these are the items here. I will not read them to you. Regarding the scope of services, suffice to say it is for full legal representation and staffing of all the services, including research, analyzing, and then investigating each assigned case. We also included the hours and operations of the court that they will need to be able to provide to support court operations. Timeline and next steps. Staff recommendation is that we would issue this next year. We would wait till after the first of the year. So sometime the first week of January, we would issue the RFP. Sometime during the second week of January, we would host a pre-proposal conference. That's where interested parties could ask questions and receive information on the RFP. And then week 3, we would have a deadline for any written questions if there's clarification or additional information that needs to be provided as part of the RFP process. We would allow that to come in through the 3rd week. We would then provide written responses to any written questions or that we received, and we would provide that out for all interested parties. RFPs would be due in the middle of February. We would take the last couple weeks of February to analyze those proposals, and then in March we would come back, and as directed by the resolution, we would back to the policy committee, and council would be begin its process for making a determination on if and how to move forward. With that, we can answer any questions that council has.
Questions of the interim city manager?
Mayor?
Councilmember Coons.
Yes, so in the presentation that was sent to council for item 7A, it shows a total number of cases at 4,231 for 2022. So I'm a little confused as to why there's such a discrepancy between the number of cases that is being, that the public defender's office is indicating that they've completed versus what court administration is reporting to council. And I'm not sure if there's someone on staff that can answer that. If Ms. Cadiz can maybe clarify, like how is the public defender's office coming up with that number that's so significantly higher than what's being reported to council in this RFP backup?
Mr. Batchelor?
So we received our information from courts administration, and I think we can follow up for them on clarification. My understanding from the courts administration staff was that they are considering a case where a public defender has been assigned, regardless of whether that case, involves multiple steps or is, received and then, dismissed within the first step or plea bargained out. So it's essentially, a case is once it's assigned, there's one defendant for that case, and then it moves forward. So that's my understanding of that, how the courts administration came in. And I'm sure Ms. Cadiz will enlighten us during 7A as to how they've come up with their number.
Okay, further discussion?
Mayor, I'm just concerned about that huge discrepancy.
Sure.
I think it makes a big difference in our understanding of how we proceed, and is, I think, a very relevant consideration. And I certainly have more discussion points if we're at the point for discussion versus questions.
Well, I think, okay, very well. Discussion.
Okay. So we did receive several letters in the last few days. The first one was from the ACLU, and it really called into question this entire process overall from a legal standpoint. Specifically, it states that the process contemplated by the resolution poses significant conflicts of interest and would be inconsistent with state and municipal law. And following on to justify that point, the Public Defender Commission was established by Aurora Municipal Code, Section 50-166. The municipal code gives the commission the responsibility to appoint and discharge the municipal public defender and his or her assistants. Aurora Municipal Code 50-169. The commission must ensure that indigent defendants are represented independently of any political consideration. Aurora Municipal Code 50-166. Colorado Revised Statutes 13-10-114.5 requires each municipality to provide defense counsel for each indigent defendant charged with a municipal code violation for which there is a possible sentence of incarceration. The same statute requires that a nonpartisan entity independent of the municipal court and municipal officials oversee or evaluate indigent defense counsel. A municipality could satisfy that requirement through the creation of a local independent indigent defense commission, which we have. Aurora had previously established the Public Defender Commission, which was deemed to be in compliance with the state statute. A local indigent defense commission has the responsibility and exclusive authority to appoint indigent defense counsel and the sole authority to discharge him or her for cause. It is also worth noting that SB 18-203 intended to insulate indigent defense counsel from the political whims of municipal officials and the judicial economy concerns of municipal judges. Pursuant to SB 18-203, independent indigent defense requires at minimum that a nonpartisan entity, independent of the municipal court and municipal officials, oversee or evaluate indigent defense counsel. This resolution directs the presiding judge and the city manager to effectively compare the public defender's office to alternative methods of providing indigent defense counsel via RFP process. That comparison is fundamentally an evaluation of the public defender's office, and the presiding judge and city manager are precisely the kinds of partial individuals who should not be tasked with the evaluation of indigent defense counsel. And there's about 6 pages that I would like to ask Katie that be included along with the letters from Colorado defense attorneys and the Denver Justice Project in the minutes of our meeting. But the really big question that particular letter raises for me is whether or not we are abiding by city code and state law, which I have tried to raise multiple times, and it's been brushed off as no, we're allowed to do this. But it's deeply concerning to me that the judge, who is not an independent, uninterested body in the outcomes of court cases, is in any way a part of this evaluation. That seems to me to be in conflict with the state law guaranteeing independence. And so if anyone from the city attorney's office can clarify how that is not the case, and also how having the city manager instead of the public defender commission undertake this process is not in violation of our city codes around the public defender, it would be really helpful, because I don't think a clear explanation has up to this point been given.
That's one quick question, and that is, is this for information only? Because we've already voted on the resolution to move forward. So what is what is the purpose of this briefing tonight? Is there a decision that has to be made by council?
Mayor, you're correct. Council had already directed us to issue the RFP. This is for information as part of the discussions. It had been mentioned by council members that the RFP would be a matter of public discussion before it was issued. So that's why we're here tonight.
Can someone address council members Coombs' concerns?
Mayor and council members, this is George Kumatakis with the City Attorney's Office. Good evening. Starting with our charter section 9-1, unless otherwise provided by this charter, all boards and commissions shall be appointed by the council, be advisory in character, serve without compensation, which shall be paid with their necessary expenses actually incurred in the discharge of their official duties, and shall have such powers and perform such duties as are provided by this charter and by order. And it goes on. I think the concern is that when you move to 3-10, powers withheld from council, neither the council nor any of its committees or members shall direct or request the appointment of any person to or his removal from employment by the city manager, or in any manner take part in the appointment of removal employees in the administrative service of the city, except as otherwise provided in this charter. So in effect, the city council has required the RFP, which will proceed, and then there's an issue with the way the ordinance is written for the way the public defender commission has been created. seems to be a conflict with the way the charter requires it in the ordinances. So there are concerns in that regard.
Mayor, can I ask a follow-up?
Do, but I really want to get to 7A because I think we're going to be, otherwise we're going to be fairly repetitive because we have 7A to basically discuss is in opposition to the RFP. So I really want to move to 7A quickly. So, but go ahead and make a comment.
Yeah, so I guess my question is then, so we've had on the books for 30 years a commission that is in conflict with the charter. That addresses the charter question, which seems like something we should probably deal with, but it doesn't address the state statute question, because having that statute on the book, that ordinance on the books, is actually what enabled us to be seen as independent and understood as an independent under the state law. So how are we, if we were to say, nope, no problem, Public Defender Commission doesn't have any role here, how do we address the fact that then we no longer comply with the requirement of independence under state statute?
Mayor, if I could, it's Zvonik, just real quick.
Mayor Pro Tem, and then I really want to move to 7A.
Yeah, I want to answer this question. We can. So the other cities that every other city in the state that does this, they use the Alternative Defense Council instead of a commission. So again, this proposal isn't taking that step that you're suggesting it is. This proposal is simply just asking the cost benefit first. And then if we took that step, we'd have to determine if we want to get the charter, or we'd want to change the charter to deconflict it and have a commission, or do what every other city in the state does and use the Alternative Defense Council as that independent organization that could oversee and evaluate the independence of our public defender's office.
Okay. I'd like to go ahead and move to 7A.
Mayor, can I ask a question real quick?
Councilmember Brody.
So we are, by the resolution that we voted on at the last meeting, we already moved to do the RFP. So what are we deciding?
It's for information only. We're not deciding anything.
Okay.
That's why I want to move to 7A. 7A, indigent defense services provided by the Aurora Public Defenders. Councilmember Coombs.
All right, Mayor, thank you. So as we've already begun to discuss to some degree, there seem to be several issues with the decision we've already taken. But I would like to make sure that we have it fully on the record and the full understanding of both our council and the public, what the actual functions are of our public defender's office, as well as the concerns around conflicts and inadequacies of the information that we have used to undertake that decision. And so I'll pass it on to our Chief Public Defender, Elizabeth Cadiz.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Can you hear me okay? I'm sorry, I was having some technical difficulties earlier. I think you heard me unmute myself.
You're fine.
Okay, thank you. And can you see the screen that I shared?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor, Councilmember Coombs, City Council. I think I first have to just start with saying that the record that's been made so far is really historically inaccurate. Just if you look at the legislative history of 1310 when 14.5, that particular statute was passed in 2018. It was driven in large part by the ACLU, and actually before it was passed, they negotiated in good faith with the city of Aurora and with Denver, who already had existing commissions, that their existing commissions would serve as the compliance with that statute, and that they didn't have to change their commissions at all. And in fact, after that statute passed, despite that very clear and express request by our judiciary at the time for that exception to the rule, the city tried to change the ordinance, and the ACLU had to act. This is actually referenced in the ACLU letter that you all have, and it's highly concerning to us that what has been hashed out, in fact, many times now in the last, at least since 2016, 7 years, is continuing to come up again. I'm here tonight to talk about my office, and I'm here tonight to talk about the rights of the people who I represent and the Constitution. I'm here to talk about independence and about this idea of an RFP, which I don't believe the resolution in particular directs. The resolution that was passed specifically requests that the city manager and the presiding judge do an RFP to evaluate whether or not other services could in fact be cheaper. It doesn't specify in any way, shape, or form that it should be a contract for services. So I'm going to start with the city manager's presentation, because I think that this particular slide, if we're going to talk about what's reasonable, is reasonable, and it sets out 5 really good guide points of how, you know, despite obviously my offices and most of the defense bar and the ACLU, despite our opposition to this act, it's reasonable. It's also extremely incomplete and inaccurate. That you would proceed on this without considering the information before you. You as a city council and the city manager have set out this process that recognizes the need for reliable data and the importance of making a prudent decision that has support. And you should, because the decision that you're making tonight and that you're making, that you've already made, impacts the constitutional rights of the people who live in your city and who enter the courthouse that you run. The problem that you have is that no reliable data has been gathered at all. And the data that's been described as an estimate, that's been described as a presentation, that's been described as a study is all inaccurate. So I think we have to start where this all began. And when we talk about we need to put this RFP out so that we can hurry up and get this thing done, and this has been going on for 18 months. That's not really true. What's true is that the Citizens Advisory Budget Committee presented a recommendation to this city council last year during the annual budget process that specifically asked for a cost benefit analysis. It didn't ask for an RFP to contract out the services of the public defender. It asked for a cost benefit analysis, and specifically it recommended that the cost benefit analysis consider the Aurora Public Defender's Office versus Alternative Defense Counsel and the Office of the State Public Defender. As reflected in the budget book that you have, that you've seen, that you can see again, the recommendation was for a study, and that's where this all began. This document was provided in response to a core request. The core request was made after, finally, after months and months of hearing that perhaps if we contracted out the services of the Public Defender's Office without any actual data to support that, which was even referenced at the presentation by the CABC, there was a reference at a city council made to a study, and expressly a study that came back to the city council that said, you could save $1 million. Well, this is the first time that anyone has heard that at all. And so a core request is done, and this is what came back, a confidential case analysis that was apparently completed by court administration and presented to and provided to at least 2 council members back in March that I don't believe has been shared, but I could be wrong, of course, with the rest of the city council. This is not a study. And one of the things that 1310-114.5 recommends, or not recommends, requires, is transparency. This is also not transparent. It uses numbers from a workload analysis of the Aurora Public Defender's Office that was actually paid for and completed by a professional entity It uses numbers from a workload analysis for a case analysis. There's no source information, there's no author, and what we all know now, because we're all going through a court-wide workload study, is that in fact, a workload study, a workload assessment, requires a consideration of empirical data with stakeholder perspectives on quality of justice and effective practices. This quote is not from the workload study that we had done. It's from the workload study that is ongoing. Just to give you an example of the inaccuracy that's contained in this document, should this be the basis for these claims that $1 million could or might be saved, we have an average cost per case here that's based on a budget number, some other numbers that were manipulated from a workload study to show that the average cost per case is $780.16. Your own city manager, the budget book the same year from last year indicated that that was completely not true. And in fact, the 2022 projection last year was $576 per case, and for this year, $658 per case. It's a pretty big difference, particularly when we're trying to carve out $1 million of savings. The recommendation, again, was to compare to other jurisdictions, and specifically other jurisdictions who were utilizing OSPD and ADC. There was also a recommendation that we consider Colorado Springs. And again during the presentation where this all came up, there was a request for more data, background data. And there was a response that there wasn't any data. And there was a recommendation, I think even by the mayor, that said we should talk about providing money in the budget to do a study to find this data. You all know all this stuff that's on this slide. It was presented to you and provided to you by Doug Wilson in his answers to the city council. But the Colorado Springs Municipal Court is absolutely not comparable. It doesn't have DVs, doesn't have motor vehicle theft, it doesn't have mandatory minimums. It's described as a homelessness court. They had 4 jury trials last year, and we're getting ready to have 120 or more. The Office of the Alternate Defense Counsel does not provide evaluation services for every single other municipality that doesn't have a commission. That's patently false. And in fact, the Office of Alternate Defense Counsel has not been consulted prior to or endorsed most of the comments that have been made about what they do and where they do it. The State Public Defender's Office does not want to take on the authority or the jurisdiction to handle municipal representation. So I ask this council to consider several other ways in which Aurora is an outlier, because at the end of the day, that's what we keep coming back to, because we don't have anything but estimates and speculation. We don't have any real facts. We don't have any comparable jurisdictions because there really aren't any. But keep in mind that Aurora is an outlier in more ways than one. Only Aurora and Denver have municipal defender offices. Where's the comparison to the Denver Municipal Defender Office? That would, I'm assuming, be the closest fit. Only Aurora and Denver had public defender commissions in place when CRS 1310-114.5 was passed, which is why, in good faith, the ACLU negotiated in driving that legislation to include exceptions for us, just us, and Denver. And only Aurora and Denver have prosecuted well over 1,000 domestic violence cases a year for the last 5 years. Only Aurora has 3 mandatory minimums on the books, and only Aurora is the most diverse city in the state. And that's important. That's really important when you're talking about the constitutional rights of the people who are accused of crimes, because the collateral consequences that are faced by people who are particularly not U.S. citizens, not from the United States, and are facing significant immigration consequences, or those who speak, rare dialects and need the services of interpretation. And as a defense counsel, you're required to obtain immigration advisements. These are all very important factors that you should consider in leading your city in making decisions about their rights. It's because we're an outlier that you should consider with great caution the decisions in this matter and the constitutional guarantees. As I said before, here's the spread for domestic violence. Domestic violence is something that the city cares about, that the city cares to prosecute, and it actually informed the decision to establish a public defender's office to begin with. The city of Aurora clearly, based on these numbers, prosecutes well over 1,000 DV cases a year, has for some time, and in fact was very vocal about keeping that jurisdiction. Before I move on to another guest that I have to speak, I just want to also comment on this case data that, again, Councilmember Coombs had pointed out. I don't know where this came from. I think that the city council, who has repeatedly made the technology and the lack of technology systems in the court, in the city attorney's office, and in judicial services a priority, and commented on the needs associated with them, dedicated $700,000 in the budget for a new case management, should take all of this with a pretty big grain of salt. The data that was provided was inconsistent even compared to 2 different slides that were provided to you, and what I have here is what shows that actually none of this is accurate. We have a case management system. We're the only office actually over here in the court that does. So if we're talking about just cases that were open, this year we're projected to open 2,090, not a little over 1,000, which is what was just shared by the city manager's presentation. The jury trials, I don't know what any of the numbers mean that are provided, but I can tell you for sure that we've had 119 so far. And it goes on. And there's additional data that we've collected that's going to appear in the performance measures for the budget book that demonstrates that this doesn't even include the cases that we appear on in Division 8. And that's what brings us up to a total of 4,000. So your number 5, receive proposals that allow cost comparison in accordance with the resolution. What the resolution says is to evaluate alternative methods of providing legal defense. Whether court-appointed defense counsel could be provided in a more cost-effective manner. Many of you have said and mentioned, whether on the council floor or in conversations or when this issue has been brought up, that this is about a study. What you have in front of you is not a study. It's the intent to contract. It's the intent to eliminate the independent office of the public defender's office. I invited Griffin Damaris, who's one of our public defenders here at the city, to give you an idea of what our time is spent doing. The scope of work that is set out in this RFP is also highly inaccurate and oversimplified. And that's a problem, because as it would be in any RFP, when you set out a statement of work, that is what you will receive bids on. And the statement of work that's set out simply doesn't cover it. So I'm going to let him talk to you about what it's like to have 25 cases.
Ms. Candace, here's what I've got down as outside speakers: Tom DeBiason, Chair, Public Defender Commission, and Ann England, University of Colorado Law School.
I thank you, Mayor. I apologize. I should have asked for permission when I first got on, but I requested invitations for actually 2 other individuals. I don't intend to have all of them speak, but I hadn't been able to confirm them until with your staff and with city manager's staff until today. And so they've all received invitations.
A question of the, I guess, our own legal department, and that is, if it's, can we take outside speakers that are not, that were not published in advance?
So, Mayor, you shouldn't take anything in written form. Again, the council rules actually say it has to be given to council ahead of time. as to speakers that is under your discretion as the mayor.
I
Mayor.
would like to, I'm sorry,
Councilmember Murillo.
Councilmember Moreno.
Is there a precedent that's ever been set of disallowing presenters when we have an item to limit
Well, I
the
could,
amount of speakers?
I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll limit the time because boy, this was down for 20 minutes. You're about you're over 15 minutes now. But if you could please move through this quickly so we have some opportunity for questions.
Sure. And thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. With that kind of timeline, I want to be sure my commission is heard. And I also do have an expert that can speak to flat fee contracts. So if I could, no offense, Griffin, who is here to tell you about what he does, and it's very important. I want to be sure that David Kaplan from our commission and Eve from Michigan Law School has an opportunity to speak. David, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
I'm going to flip. Yep.
Mayor Kaufman, can you and the council hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Well, thank you, Mayor Kaufman, the council, for a few minutes of your time. I'm here representing actually the Public Defender Commission that has had a bunch of comments made and presentations relating it to, and I'll be short about some of my comments. I wanted to tell you that I started with the commission probably over 3 years ago, and I have been continuously impressed with how much dedication and knowledge they have about public defenders and this particular public defender's office, and how active and involved in making it, as you've heard, a model throughout the country. So I guess one of the points that I want to make is the commission has so much information about what this particular office does and why it's so effective and why it's cost effective and what it needs even in funding and increased services to do the job that it's currently doing, that I was hopeful that somebody from the commission would have been part of developing the RFP. And the reason why that's so important is not only the subject matter expertise that the commission brings to it. And I was going to talk a little bit about the powers that I believe the commission has as a result of the charter and the ordinance. That's been well spoken to and well addressed. I do think from what I heard that there is some questions as to whether some of the activity that's about to happen would be in violation of either one or both of those pieces of legislation. But I understand that the council has talked about, we've already authorized an RFP. So what are we discussing? And this is what I'd like the council members to consider. And that is, at one of the meetings, I think it was Councilman Gardner talked about how we wanted to make sure that we were comparing apples to apples. And what I see in this RFP and what Ms. Cadiz has said, and what I think the rest of the commission would like to express to the council, is that there is not enough in this RFP to get the kind of bid that the council could use to really compare the service that has been provided, that is required by the Constitution, and that would accomplish all the things that this public defender office accomplishes, and the cost comparison between what is being bid out and what the current public defender office costs. So if I were to suggest anything, I wouldn't go back to necessarily right now the vote of the RFP, although I think others have spoken to that. But what I would say to you is, if you really want to get a bid that is comparable to the requirements, then you should back off a little bit with this RFP, invite a commission member to participate in the creation of the RFP, and distribute something for bid or for consideration that really will tell the council if they are receiving comparable services and if they are receiving the type of representation that will pass the constitutional muster. And I think that's what the council wants if they're going to go ahead with the RFP. if they're going to, in some ways, ignore what I think is a problem in the charter and the ordinance, but at least at a minimum, if in a month or two bids come in, that the bids are coming in that reflect the kind of work that's required and the kind of work that's being done. So that's what I would suggest to council in terms of moving forward, because I don't think this RFP, as demonstrated by Ms. Cadiz and other comments, are going to get you an apples to apples comparison.
I apologize.
I'm sorry, if you could go to the next speaker then.
Yes, thank you. Professor Primus, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, kind of. You're breaking up a little.
How about now? Is that better?
Can you guys hear her? I can't.
No, you're breaking up a lot. Maybe turn off the video.
Okay.
Might help because it sounds like
How's
it's a
that?
bandwidth issue.
Is that better?
Still really choppy.
Hmm. Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead. It's choppy, but we can hear you. Please go ahead.
You can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. My name is Eve Primus. I'm a professor at the University of Michigan Law School. I actually study and write about indigent defense delivery systems and how they're structured. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I just wanted to echo, although give a little bit of a different contour to something that was just said about the nature of the current draft of the RFP, which I've had a chance to look at. Upon my reading of the RFP, it looks like what it calls for is an annual fee to be paid in monthly installments to whoever applies to contract for these services as independent contractors. So in short, it is asking for bids for flat fee contracts to handle indigent defense representation for the municipal courts in Aurora. There's a lot of research as well as a number of cases and studies that indicate that resort to flat fee contracts actually does not comply with constitutional standards. So when you pay a flat fee contract to attorneys in order to have them provide indigent defense representation, you do not pay for overhead or benefits or self-employment taxes because they are independent contractors, which means they often cannot afford investigators, paralegals, assistants, or experts. They often cannot make a living wage because they have bid for a low bid contract in order to get the contract. And they wind up having inherent conflicts between their own financial interests and their ethical obligations to represent their clients, because they have an incentive to churn through cases quickly and to avoid specialty courts, because they're not paid for their time, they're paid to handle the entire docket. And so why would places resort to this? Well, the ABA has outlawed these kinds of contracts, and a number of states, including Michigan, Nevada, South Dakota, Idaho, Washington, and others, have also outlawed these kinds of contracts. And in part, they've done it based on research and data that shows that the outcomes are not reliable from flat fee contracts when they are given for indigent defense services, but it is also done based on cost. And my understanding is that a lot of what you are trying to do is think about cost saving measures. In reality, when contracts are not done solely on the basis of cost, they actually cost more. And the RFP that you have right now is not going to give you, as others have said, this apples to apples comparison, because the current RFP doesn't take into account a lot of things that are necessary when you're focusing on the cost of an indigent defense service. And so, for example, when you have privatization, when you have these lawyers who are working on contract, they don't get the same economies of scale that an in-house public defender office like the Aurora Municipal Defender gets from having training and supervision in-house. And nothing in the RFP would account for that. They also don't have the pooled resources, databases, shared office space, shared computers that you would get with an institutional public defender's office. And nothing in the RFP accounts for that. They also have more administrative delays in getting appointed than an institutional public defender does. And so when attorneys get involved earlier, there's a lot of research that shows they can get cases resolved faster, and it increases the accuracy of the resolutions they can reach because the facts can be found and investigated earlier. And that's something public defender offices can do that private attorneys can't and isn't measured under the current RFP. The current RFP doesn't talk about the costs of running an appointment and billing system to administer the contract to these individuals. And so that's also something that is a cost for privatization that does not exist for institutional public defender offices. And if you wanted to do an apples to apples comparison between an institutional public defender and a contract attorney, you'd need to also consider the differences in imprisonment costs on the front end and back end that come with privatizing indigent defense. So there's research around the country that there are lower conviction rates and shorter sentences that don't compromise public safety when you are working with institutional public defenders offices. And that results in immense cost savings that you won't get with contract attorneys. So, for example, this is one of many examples. When North Carolina moved to flat fee contracts in 2008, they were 36% more likely to have attorneys just meet and plead attorneys on clients on the same day. And it cost the taxpayers $22 million a year in incarceration costs. So right now, this RFP doesn't take into account any of the potential rises in costs that would come with more imprisonment as a result of reduced quality service that would come with an assigned counsel or flat fee contract system. You also have better budget predictability with an institutional public defender that you're not going to get with a contract system. So if Aurora wanted to criminalize more offenses or add more mandatory minimums, it will increase the cost of a contract system, and that cost would then go up and you'd have to be renegotiating it. And that is in fact what has happened in a lot of jurisdictions. So for example, when Clark County, Washington moved to a contract system before flat fee contracts were banned, there was an immediate decrease in advocacy on behalf of indigent clients and an unexpected increase in the number of felony cases from increased arrests, which led to incredible rising costs and made it drastically more expensive than the institutional public defender office system. So the problem with the current RFP is that it actually doesn't consider all sorts of hidden additional costs that will exist if you privatize indigent defense. So you'll probably get, the way the RFP is structured, it says we're looking for a flat fee amount to handle these contracts. So you could easily get an estimate that might come and look cheaper than your current institutional public defender office, but it will not provide you with an accurate assessment of what the actual costs of privatization include, because it doesn't take into account all of these hidden costs that you will have by virtue of not having an institutional public defender office. So not only are flat fee contracts constitutionally suspect, and I know the ACLU has written a letter, and in the interest of time, I won't go into it, but I can tell you about lawsuits around the country challenging successfully flat fee contracts as providing unconstitutional levels of service. So not only do you risk that independent of your independence issues with the statutes that you are governed under, but you also really risk not actually understanding what the true costs would be, because this doesn't measure all sorts of ways in which an institutional public defender office saves you immense amounts of money. And so you could wind up with a system where you take what looks like a low bid contract, and then all these costs bubble up and it winds up costing you more. And you do that at the risk of compromising the quality of the representation that is provided to indigent defendants in Aurora, because flat fee contracts incentivize private attorneys to engage in fast, quick processing of cases without investigation, without legal research, and without the requisite sort of attention that is necessary to ensure reliable outcomes. So with that, I will stop. Thank you for the opportunity.
Do you have any other speakers?
No, I just had one last thing to say, Mayor. I appreciate your patience and everyone's patience, and thank you, Eve. I apologize for the audio issues. If I may, Mayor, it's very brief.
Please.
Okay. I have to, on behalf of my office and as the director of this office, say that perhaps one of the most concerning things to our clients currently and to the city employees that work for you and work for this city is that there's been no acknowledgement of the harm that this has to them right now, to our office in trying to retain the good lawyers that are here, while they know that they may not be guaranteed a job at the end of next year. There's been no consideration of what a transition looks like for our clients or for our employees. And so I would ask the council to also consider that, as I don't believe that this is typically the way that the city operates in terms of discharging an entire department without any care or concern for the people who are giving their blood, sweat, and tears, so to speak, to do a pretty tough job in your city and keep the constitutional rights safe for those that you owe them to. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions of any of the presenters?
Mayor,
Councilmember Combs.
can we go back to Mr. Kaplan, because he was kind of talking while there was a slide up that shows kind of what is necessary to meet the Sixth Amendment, and we really didn't talk through those. And so I'm wondering if the request is, or like, to me, it seems reasonable that we would have an RFP that included all of these things.
Let's put it into a question.
Okay, Mr. Kaplan,
Put it into a question.
can you elaborate the items on the slide about Sixth Amendment effective assistance, which requires competent, well-prepared, and client-centered counsel?
Yeah, and again, I'll try to be brief because I do appreciate the time given to this, to this question, and I think that we covered it a little bit in the prior presenters' discussion. Also, there has to be a certain amount of certainly their competence, their training. They are required to investigate and have investigators and experts, if necessary, to present the case to try to get either a disposition or in front of a jury. They have to be they have to have the time to visit with their clients. They have to have the time to visit with their clients that are both out of custody and indigent people. It's not easy to accomplish that. Because very often the indigent population does not have transportation and can't get where they are, and they need resources. They need to develop resources to get mental health requirements or mental health aid, not only in expert witnesses, but in consultations, which we have been very proud of what has been done in the Public Defender's Office to partner up with Aurora Mental Health to be able to do that at a low cost and a very efficient way. They have to meet with their clients, as I said, on a regular basis, but they have to meet with them early so that they can argue bond when they're first in custody, because an individual has a right to representation during the bond hearing. And so all of these competencies that are required in order to be effective under the Sixth Amendment are done with an economy of scale that results from an institutional public defender's office. And it are the kind of things that need to be factored in, as we were just hearing about in a flat fee. A flat fee type of operation incentivizes people not to do all those things. And that's why the lawsuit, and that's why the lawsuits happen.
Sorry, who's
Sorry, it's Zavonic. I keep hearing this, and I want somebody to point out where in the RFP it says flat fee. Could somebody point that out to me? Ms. Cadiz, go ahead, since it was referenced by you and multiple members of your speakers. I just want to know where in the RFP it says flat fee.
Sure. Can you guys hear me? Sorry.
Yep.
Okay. So it's interesting because it doesn't. However, in order for you to realize the cost,
what was that again?
Mayor, can we not
Making
engage
stuff
in
up.
this back and
Okay,
forth?
let's
I just wanted to make sure.
Be
So does
recognized
it?
by the chair, be recognized by the chair. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, finish your remark.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, because we're continuing to hear this, and it's wasting everybody's time, just like this entire presentation. It never mentions it. The RFP never once mentions flat fee. It's completely made up. The point of the RFP is to get some of the data that Ms. Cadiz says that the CABC recommended a study. The CABC doesn't have any authority. The council at a budget committee asked the city manager to move forward with the cost analysis, which never happened. And because that didn't happen, council then passed a resolution requesting an RFP done so that we can actually get numbers, not mentioning flat fees in there. There's so much disinformation around all of this. It's disheartening. You talked about the employees that you're worried about in the department. I'm worried that they're continually hearing misinformation about what this RFP does. It simply asks the city manager to get us a cost estimate so we can determine whether or not we should have a subsequent conversation about the way that we provide indigent defense in the city of Aurora. That's what this does. Anything beyond that is what you think may happen. And I know early on there was a lot of speculation from your office saying that there's no way that it's going to be any more cost effective. If that's true, then let's just hurry up and get through this RFP and prove that point, because I've said multiple times, if that's the case, this conversation ends. And all of this wouldn't matter.
Okay. Further questions, Councilmember Moreno.
Oh, sorry about that. So we're talking about a request for proposal as opposed to request for information. I believe that was offered earlier in the process to amend the request for a request for information, which would in fact be asking for the information that we're talking about. I very much disapprove of this move that we're making, but I also want to be clear that there were mechanisms suggested and declined by the sponsor to, instead of asking for a request for information, we are moving one step forward and a request for proposal. So we could have had the conversation around it gathering information as one thing. So that I don't agree that that's, and we've heard the language and the direction that the language is suggesting that we are indeed asking for people to make this proposal. Additionally, I'm deeply concerned with the conflicting information that I'm hearing, that I have been hearing about what we are going to request proposals on. We don't even have the right information and are not even including the full scope of these costs to make a apples to apples comparison. That's deeply concerning. For me, I would really, ask to see if we could include the list that's been presented. I believe it's on slide 16 and 18 of additional services that would make a fully comparable analysis, since we're requesting that in the name of data and comparables and cost savings. I don't feel comfortable that it's being framed as an apples to apples comparison when clearly there are other unintended costs and consequences that arise with a move like this. So can we include those additional requirements in a study?
You can, but I'm gonna, Mr. Brossman, opine on this, but my understanding is you need to do a motion to reconsider, and that can only be made during a regular meeting to reverse what is really a settled question, in that the city council has already passed something that we continue to discuss. And so, Mr. Brossman, can you opine on that?
And a confirmation will suffice if that is the case.
That is the case, and the reconsideration would need 6 affirmative votes to move forward.
And then somebody on the prevailing side would have to do that.
Bring forward, yes.
Forward.
Mayor,
Question.
clarify that. I have a question.
Go
When
proceed.
we voted on the whether or not to move forward with the RFP, the conversation was, well, we'll have a conversation about what these details are going to be for this RFP to make sure that it actually provides us with adequate information. And now we're saying we would like to include in this RFP some additional questions that would provide us that information. And folks are saying, no, you can't do that without reconsidering. We're not saying don't do the RFP. We're saying, can that RFP include those additional details that would give us better information?
Can you outline that again?
So my understanding was you were doing a request for, wanted to do a request for information rather than a request for
No.
for the RFP. So again, there was a direction by council, by the resolution to do an RFP, and that was presented earlier tonight. The proposal for the RFP was proposed earlier tonight. So you would talk with the people doing the RFP, being the city manager and the presiding judge that are doing the RFP, to have those pieces included.
Mayor.
Councilmember Jones.
Can we also just allow Ms. Cadiz to finish the response that she was giving earlier when she was rudely cut off about why it is that she and other folks have referred to a flat fee?
Okay, Mrs. Cadiz, briefly.
Thank you. First of all, on page 327, it suggests there be a cap on the fee, which is a flat fee. And secondly, all we've been hearing in support of this effort is that there could be cost savings realized of $1 million or more. You can't adequately, you can't articulate or reasonably expect there to be a realization of cost savings in a dollar amount like that without there being a flat fee on the front end, because otherwise this whole process doesn't even get you from point A to point B.
Further questions?
Mayor, I just want to clarify with the
And I keep
city
getting
attorney.
passed over and I keep asking.
Okay, I'm
I'm
sorry.
happy to defer to
Councilmember
Councilmember Hancock, but I
please
did have
proceed.
clarification.
Councilmember Hancock, please proceed.
So something that was said earlier that I'm kind of confused on, and it may seem elementary, but I need an answer. What constitutes a case? Is it by person or is it by intervention? So if a person goes to trial, if they're there and they're a client and they're indigent, is it everything that happens with that person? Is that considered one case, or is it every interaction that you have with that person? Is because the 1,600 number and the $4,000 number, 4,000 case number, those two things don't make any sense to me. So I'm wondering how you're coming with those numbers and how is that data calculated so that we know what is actually happening here. And my second question would be, someone had referenced that the office has electronic data collection and that you can transmit documents via the internet. But that is not what I understand to be true, that the documents are actually still in paper format and that you haven't transitioned to an electronic system. So can you clarify to me what is actual fact here?
Yes. May I answer that?
Please proceed quickly.
So the one of the slides, Councilmember Hancock, and thank you, Mayor. So one of the slides that was just presented, and also it's in the original backup, I think it might even be on the very last page. It provides performance measure summary for case numbers and other things. And so in terms of our case numbers, the public defender and what is a case, we count, so we have a case management system. I wasn't trying to suggest that we have a electronic discovery or electronic sharing system. It's separate and apart from that. We have an internal case management system in our office where we can keep track of opening a case and what's going on with the case, and we use that to track our time. So I hope that that's clear. And you're right, the rest of the court there is not a modernized case management system in the city attorney's office or judicial or court administration, that's an internal public defender case management system. Our case count it comes from two numbers really, and they're different. One of them is when we open a case, we're appointed formally on a case that's going to have a future court date. So those are the cases that you're describing. Case is going to go to a jury trial. Now we may have several cases for the same person, right? Because each case, each summons is a separate case, and we do count that. Then we have the individuals that we see in Division 8, which is our in custody division. And so a lot of times we appear on a case for one day while we're in 8, and we either resolve it by a disposition, or we might make a bond argument, or it might turn out that that person doesn't qualify for our services once they get out of jail. And so our appearance for that person on that case is a case, but we haven't opened it in our system because it doesn't have a future court date. Does that answer your question, council member?
I'm still trying to figure out why is there such a big discrepancy between those numbers? I mean, if there's 1,600 cases, how did we get to the 4,000 some odd cases? Are you suggesting, and talk to me like I'm in the second grade here, because I'm trying to figure out how this works. How do you determine these numbers? Is it because, like to your point earlier, if you go to a different court and you interact with a defendant on that case, that counts as a case, even though you don't actually resolve anything there, or you may resolve something there? Or if that person has multiple charges, each charge incurs a case designation that you track. Is that right?
Well, so Councilmember Hancock, let me just, first of all, the number 1,600, I just want to be sure I'm clear on what you're referring to, because I think what you're referring to is the city manager's presentation and the numbers that were provided. And those are not our numbers. We did not, I don't know where those numbers came from. They're wholly inaccurate. Those are from the court's case management system, but we haven't been using the court's case management system for a really long time. And I think that what's probably been overlooked, at least from the very minimal kind of research we did, was that the cases are sealed in municipal court when they're dismissed, and so that limits the ability to access them. But either way, I don't know. I can't explain where those numbers came from. What I can tell you though is that the way that we count cases is if there's a summons that comes in and Judge Day or another judge appoints us to represent that client for the entirety of that case, so pre-trial, jury trial, appeal, et cetera, that's one case. But every case could be, it varies in the length, right? Like you could have a case that we only appear on that person's behalf one time and it's resolved. Or you could have a case where we are representing the person and it takes months to resolve. And so it depends on the case, but either way, we're appointed to represent every person that's in custody that's facing charges and arraigned in Division 8 in our in custody division. We're also then separately appointed at different times by the court while people are out of custody. And either way, we count a case by a J number, which is the summons.
Okay.
Mayor Drinsky.
I wonder if we could follow up with that. And I want to go to Mrs. Cadiz for a wrap up.
Can I say something, Drinsky?
Yeah, Mayor, I was in the queue.
Okay, Councilmember Drinsky, Councilmember Moreno, and then Mrs. Cadiz for a wrap up.
Thank you.
Also, thank you. I just wanted to clarify, I'm not so sure that our system is antiquated. I thought that our court system is the court of record. But a couple things that I want to say that I've heard tonight that I just find wholly disingenuous is that, yes, it was presented to us that there was a potential savings of $1 million, but to make this out to be solely about money, again, is wholly disingenuous. I myself have been accused of probably one of the most horrifying things that anyone on this meeting or watching this meeting could even imagine, worse than your worst nightmares. And to think that, and I wouldn't have just been facing prison, I would have been facing losing my child. And to think that there isn't a care, there isn't a regard for the competency of defense that would be offered for our constituents, the people of Aurora, that is, I take great offense to that. I take great offense to that. And you know, maybe before going through what I went through, maybe the conversation would have been a little different. But I just want to clarify that this is not solely about money. And Councilmember Zavon, Mayor Pro Tem Zavonic has said multiple times that it's not just about what the potential savings would be. There would have to be a standard. And also, I find it very disingenuous to potentially say that there's no public defenders in the Denver metro area that have access to investigators and can do research and can do investigation. I also find that very disingenuous. So this entire conversation, somebody's very scared of this RFP. And I can't figure out why. If there's not going to be a cost savings and our public defender's office is so confident of that, then why not rush this thing along to prove your point, shut it down, and we never speak of it again? That's what I have to say. But the disingenuous comments and illusions of this conversation are really offensive.
Councilmember Moreno, then Mrs. Kidwis, Elizabeth Bidit.
Thank you, Mayor. I wholly do not support this at all. I think what we hear versus the sequence of events gives a very different impression of what I think the intent of this RFP, not RFI, looks like. And if we're not even willing to include in the RFP the criteria that we've laid out, that's been laid out today, to really get an apples to apples comparison, that further draws on my concern that this is not just for information's sake. Like, we should all want access to comparable information and data related to the cost benefit of a move like this. So I would just, I wanted to clarify what I thought I heard earlier from the city attorney. If my suggestion is not to move to an RFI and instead to ask to incorporate this criteria into the existing approved RFP, do I need to go to a city council vote, or how would I go about incorporating that into the existing RFP?
Mr. Brosman.
So you would not have to go to another meeting. You simply would talk with the city manager and with the presiding judge who have put together the presentation for tonight.
And is there any further approval that would be needed?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Elizabeth Kedis for a wrap up.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess the only thing that I will say is that the whole purpose of this, putting this information up and asking you all to consider it, is that it's not about fear of anything other than fear that where we're headed is into a place that jeopardizes the rights of people in the city of Aurora. I can't underline or highlight enough how great of an office you have here and how well this need is being met. To say, in conclusion, we're simply asking that you consider these items that we've presented to you as the services, the true services that we currently provide, and those services that are required to ensure constitutional rights, and that you incorporate independence and stop the political influence of this particular role. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further business before the Aurora City Council, study session for December 11, 2023. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.